Our first story deals with a subculture of heavy metal music that some feel is sending a dangerous message to your kids.
The forces of evil on the dark side of devil rock.
And I want to talk tonight about the devil and demons and witches and wizards.
And we just mix it up with hardcore and aggression and come out with something we think's an original sound.
Loud, fast, heavy, you know.
Well, what do you got?
What do you got?
You're listening to Riff Worship, the podcast that attempts to answer the age-old question, what makes a riff? Why do we care about the riff? Talking about our favorite albums containing riffs, sometimes with people who make great riffs. I'm one of your hosts, Austin Paulson. I would normally say with me, as always, Justin Swindle and Dylan Adams, but they're off doing their own thing. But I have some wonderful guests with me today who have just released a monster of a new album, Atavist. It is out now on Burning World Records and Riff Merchant Records. And I mean, it's a monster. It's got riffs, it's got atmosphere, it's got everything you would want. I am, of course, here with Mark and Julian of Cowardice. Guys, how are you? Thanks for coming on and joining the call.
Hell yeah, dude. Thank you. Fucking stoked to be here.
Yeah, dude. Thank you. Thank you, Austin, for having us on. This is pretty cool because it's funny. I heard about your guys' podcast. I think the day that one of our labels connected us to you, I had found out about you guys like earlier that day, listened to an episode. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I'm going to probably dig into this a little bit. And then Chris from Riff Merchant CC'd us on an email out to you guys. I was like, oh, small world.
Shout out Chris, shout out Riff Merchant. We got a chance to interview Sabo maybe when we kind of first started this, and he kind of connected us there. But first and foremost, congratulations on the record. It's killer. I've been listening to it a lot lately. It's no easy feat. I mean, this is it's very, I would say, thematic. I mean, it is quite literally like a feature film length in duration, but it does feel like a journey from start to finish. And, you know, it seems like, based on a lot of the research I did, this has been a long time in the making. I mean, it seems like you guys have been playing some of these songs live since like 2022. So maybe you had a hand in working them, crafting them, even perhaps before the pandemic. But I'd love to hear from you. Like, how early did this process work for starting the writing process for Atavist?
I mean, I would say it probably loosely started like summer of 21. I mean, really kind of wholly started summer of 21. There's like a few riffs here and there in songs like Annulment. That kind of like main verse riff is probably something that's been sitting on my computer forever. Clairvoyance Anxiety, like that definitely had a few riffs that was just like they were in the bank. But I found myself like you were saying, you were recently a graduate. I was recently a graduate around that time too. And I was working this job that I absolutely hated. And I took that summer to try to write more. And that was the first time I really was able to set aside time to write for this band. We've always been plagued with geographical issues and distance and conflicting schedules. We can probably get into that later at some point. But the organization of this band has always been very difficult. And working this job that I basically fucking hated, like entirely, I was like, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually like, and I was only working evening shifts. So I was just like going in at like 1, 2 p.m., leaving at like 10, 11 p.m. or whatever. And I'm a morning person. So for me, this sucked. And I would just get up every day. I made myself a promise for a week that I was going to just write a new song every single day. In like start to finish, it was going to happen within a 24-hour span for every single day. And I did that for 11 days straight and shit out this album in 11 days. And sent it off to the guys. And I was like, it's a lot of material, but can we please just do this?
That's incredible. There's something to that with forcing yourself to, I think for a lot of creative people, it's very, and maybe I'll interject myself here, where like, I like to draw, for instance, right? And sometimes It's like very hard to look at something and I'm like, wow, this is dog shit. I hate it. And, what can you speak to perhaps like, forcing yourself to maybe craft a song for that span of time, like, were there any obstacles in trying to really just come up with some of these riffs? Like, I find that very,
Yeah.
I'm envious of that. That's very cool.
I mean, I would say that the general way that the songwriting has always worked in this band is that if I don't get something done in one sitting, it's probably getting scrapped. And I've probably scrapped nearly like probably 5 to 6 hours worth of material over the years that just is like, maybe I will come back to it. And odds are within 48 to 72 hours, I'm probably going to listen back to it and I'm going to hate every second of it. Um, and that's the difficult thing about, like stuff like this is you're always like your own worst critic. But I think that the biggest obstacle that was immediately overcome was just like, you know what? Change the tuning. Change the tuning on everything. Make it something that I'm uncomfortable with. Because I like to be put into something that's maybe sort of uncomfortable. So across the album, there's like 3 different tunings we use, which is why like in the moment you're writing it, you're like, this is cool, this is fun, I've never written in this before. Then looking back, like logistically, we're here like, well, dude, we can't play that song because the tuning is so out of whack. Like we can't do that on the fly.
So, some of these songs we've been sitting on for a long time, like, and some of them we have never played live. Some of them, and likely we probably never will in some cases. Some of them.
Yeah, I can imagine that being kind of a hard transition to, a live kind of performance as well. So, if Julian, you have like an idea for a song, Mark, where do you come in and kind of, apply how to maybe attack it vocally or, as far as like thematically with some of these tracks?
So it's an interesting thing because usually what will happen is Julian will have a fully prefabricated song done. And this has been the case ever since I've joined the band pretty much. And Julian usually has a sense of what kind of thematic motifs he wants for the song because of based on whatever the emotional sort of valence is of the like the harmony or just like, yeah, whether it's just like the melody or just like the overall feeling of the song. And they usually kind of end up on my desk with a title before there's any lyrics. And in some cases I will, I'll do my best to try and write lyrics that are poignant to that particular, whatever I imagine that is meant to mean. And sometimes there are exceptions to that where it's a little bit of a stretch, but the bottom line is that most of these lyrics that I have written are, heavily sort of allegorical or, like, it's like a lot of it is actually deeply political, or it's, obviously a lot of the lyrics are about me working through my own personal bullshit or whatever. But I always find a way. Uniformly, the titles have always worked. The lyrics have always sort of dovetailed with them pretty nicely. But yeah, so that's the general sort of sketch of the process, I would say.
I hear you got like the strongest bones in doom metal. I hear this album itself was largely sponsored by the dairy industry. Your attack to the recording of the vocals on this album, I heard in the listening party, you were just downing some milk before each take.
Yeah,
it was pretty gross. It was pretty
I have to qualify that it was not real dairy milk.
Okay, all right.
It was oat milk.
That sounds painful if it were, but
oh yeah, no, it would be bad. It would be really fucked up if
what's your weapon of choice as far as milk?
I go for like the Planet Oat shit. I'm not vegan fully. I mean, I try to be vegan most of the time. I am I have been like 100% vegetarian for like 8 or 9 years or something since like my senior year of high school. But yeah, like I wouldn't just fucking drink milk straight up.
Yeah.
That seems disgusting to me. But yeah, I mean, so Chris, the drummer, he's done vocals in a number of other bands. Like he did vocals for the grindcore band Organ Dealer for a while. And I don't know if it was him or myself who came up with this idea, but like, you know, over the years playing music together, we were just like, you know, what's really good for making your throat sound like fucked up, but also like giving it a nice sort of protective lining is just like a Red Bull and some milk.
A Red Bull. Because I mean, some of these tracks, I mean, you know, I mean the vocals alone, very impressive. But like they definitely stood out to me on this record. And then finding out, you know, like even the last track, Hall of Mages, which is like 17 minutes, I believe you did in one take. Is that right?
You did do that in one take.
Did I do that one in one take? I don't know. I mean, like there was a lot of stuff that was punched and whatever, like in the studio, but that one maybe I got in one take. Who knows?
That one you did do in one take. I remember sitting there with Scott, and we were Scott is the guy who engineered it, and we were like we were placing bets on if you were gonna fuck it up, and you didn't fuck up any of it. I think we maybe moved like a word or two after like we edited it, but you didn't go back into a second take at all. Because I remember we were joking in there, we were placing over unders if you're gonna absolutely like, you know, just butcher it at one point, and no, you cruise through it.
No, that one, I mean, I remember that the hardest one was the diminutive principle was the one that was real fucking pain in the ass. And it's not because the lyrics were like difficult or it's because there's like a lot of them or whatever. It was just because that song is slow as fuck. And it's like it's almost so slow that like the human ear no longer recognizes it as like music in a time signature. So it's really hard to do that one.
You mentioned Scott, and of course, like I want to, you know, definitely shout him out because the record sounds great. It seems like you've worked with him before on the EP as well. You know, what made him kind of the perfect collaborator for this? You know, it seems like maybe on previous releases you had worked with like a member of another band that you're in. What made you sought out Scott? Like what was working with Scott like? I'd love to hear about that.
I mean, I would say for more or less, like we had just come pretty hot right off of doing that EP, and I think there was like a level of comfort of just like, you know, Scott was more or less like he was entertaining some of the crazy ideas that we had, and it was like kind of a comfort pick, I guess. And we had also just did something with him, so it was very much like our setup was very fresh in his head of how we wanted stuff to sound, and we took the opportunity to you know, take this session and capitalize on the basis of the session for the previous EP. So it was more or less like, let's take what we did and we're just gonna like up the ante a little bit on, you know, certain portions. Our previous recordings were like basically all done in my basement. They're not professional by like, you know, like a large stretch. Or I mean, I don't want to put it in a negative light because the guy who recorded them, Brian, he's a dude who I've known since elementary school. Like we grew up together, and he's like kind of like a trip hop producer, and he, you know, makes beats for other people and whatnot. I think he's got a pretty big following now, but he's just also like been a metal guy. Like we played in a metal-ish band together for like a little bit, and when I started Cowardice, I was like, Brian, you want to try your hand at recording this? And he was like, yeah, dude, like let's do it. And we just posted up in my basement for like a weekend and just knocked it out.
To kind of add to that, I mean, one of the songs, still kind of going back to the basement, correct? You recorded Moss Stone with some vocals for that in your basement.
Yeah,
tell me about that with a So I'm assuming with Brian, or was it a different hip hop producer?
Different hip hop producer, which is a funny lineage in the Cowardice history. But we basically just kind of like ran out of studio time because obviously this album is really, really long. And I mean, although we booked like 7 full days in the studio, between overdubs and cleans and vocals and all this other stuff, we inevitably kind of just like ran out of time. And Nick, our other guitarist, has a friend who again is another hip hop producer
Yep.
in New York City. Yeah, this guy Jacob, who's a real who's a real wild character,
Oh
honestly.
yeah.
He's a real wild character. And he was like, "Yeah, dude, I'll just like pull up and we'll just like like we'll do it in like an afternoon." And we just like mic'd up an amp and a cab, like plugged in some pedals, got it done. Me and Nick did vocals. We wrapped it up, and it was just like, okay, all done. We're good. But it was just one song that it was kind of crafted so last minute, but we wanted to include it. Me and Nick were just like, we have to find a way to do it, and we just found the time and made it happen.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love a lot of these like kind of that one not so much like an instrumental, but some of these kind of like interlude parts through the album. Gotta love a bog hymn. Who doesn't love a bog hymn, right?
Who doesn't love the bog hymn? That's right. Who up hymning their bog?
Yeah, Julian said something to that effect in the group chat earlier today, or this week or something. It's funny because we were talking, but it's like Julian sends me the most like putrid, because he gets up at like 4 a.m. every day, and like we and him just like, we're both up early, and we just like we just like kind of amp each other up by sending each other like either putrid memes or just like dumb inside jokes like that.
He's out there in that, but you got to get up and tend to that bog, dude.
I got to get up in my bog, dude.
That's right.
Are you, is anyone from the Massachusetts area originally? Is that where you're from?
We're a very geographically challenged band. So I moved up to Boston maybe 10 years ago for school. And in my second year of school is when I decided to start this band, and of course start it with all people in New Jersey who I like kind of knew from the scene. I grew up down in Jersey, like northern Jersey, New York City area, and those were like the musicians that I knew. Being a college student up here, it was not very financially conducive to renting a studio space here, which already is like in high demand in Boston. Boston's a really expensive city with not a lot of great resources for musicians. So again, it was like, I know people down in Jersey that might want to do this, and I travel down there to do this band, and like come down on weekends, and yeah, I mean it's like it's a very comfortable 4-hour drive that I'm very used to now.
Yeah,
but it's usually a marathon weekend for me of like, get up at 4:35 a.m. on a Saturday, drive down. We typically do these like marathon, like, 8-hour rehearsals all day. We'll do another chunk on Sunday, and I'll get back in the car and I'll drive back 4 hours and go to work on Monday.
Damn.
is unfortunately kind of the tune. But yeah, I currently live in Massachusetts though.
Okay. Are you much of a, and this is a question for both of you, are you very much nature people? Are you going out and kind of in your surroundings and maybe drawing some inspiration from nature? I say that just because it seems like there is kind of a natural kind of aura to the album itself, obviously in some of the titles, but I kind of got that vibe when I listened to it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that we were able to coax that, because I mean, I feel like both Mark and I, at least, or really the whole band, we're all kind of really city dwellers. But there's something that I found very comforting about like finally getting out of the city, and like I think visiting the Pacific Northwest a few times has helped that. And I love when music has like a regionality to it. And I feel like there's a lot of metal that kind of like touches on that regionality, I mean, I guess like the Cascadian black metal scene is like probably like a paramount example of that. And I don't know, I mean, I guess I probably like subconsciously draw influence from that, but I don't know. I've always wanted the musical output I have to sound natural in a way. and sometimes tying it to something tangible is like it's like an easy kind of out to be able to do that, you know?
Yeah, I would also second that. I mean, I don't live in New York City. I mean, as Julian has explained, we live pretty close, but I'm from northern New Jersey. Although I spent a lot of time in my formative years growing up in the Adirondacks in New York State. So that's definitely a part of my inspiration too. But yeah, also on the point of like most of the music that influenced me that like I was into, like when I first started getting into metal and like heavier, kinds of like hardcore and punk and shit. Yeah, it was all that like sort of Cascadian black metal stuff. I've actually never been out there. Next week we'll be headed out there for tour. It'll be my first time ever.
Nice.
So I'm super, super excited for that. Gonna get to see like Wolves in the Throne Room and stuff. But yeah, there's something about that music that, yeah. It's also the other thing I would add to that is that like I explained a little bit earlier that like I'm an historian, so I just did my graduate degree, and one of the longer projects that I did, it was like my undergraduate honors thesis was about like the radical environmentalist movement, like in the Northwest in the 90s.
Okay.
So at about the same time when this sort of scene, like the crust punk, like sort of like neo crust movement, at the tail end of the 1990s was coming around. You had, sort of the decline of like organizations like Earth First, and then like you start seeing things like the Earth Liberation Front, like the resurgence of like the Animal Liberation Front in North America and stuff. So all of that shit definitely resonates with me, and it's like like I said, I've never been out there, but I sort of have one foot in that world, like just out of like an intellectual curiosity. And really, honestly, like punk rock music and shit is what got me into that.
That's so cool. I do feel like there is that crossover, and that's so fascinating where, yeah, like a lot of these, not maybe even, a lot of what you're talking about, a lot of what your master's was in, but I feel like so often I'll hear somebody give like a thesis and somehow it like correlates with like DIY hardcore and punk. And I'm like, it's all connected. Somehow it is.
Oh yeah, I never would have like gotten into that shit were it not for the fact that like I grew up listening to like fucking His Hero Is Gone. Like,
yeah. Oh shit.
like
yeah.
That,
Hell yeah. Speaking about nature, I definitely wanted to touch on the artwork. Adam Burke. I mean, he's done like so much. Bell Witch, Atrabilis, Gate Creeper, Terminal Nation. I think he worked with our good friends in Fairy Ring as well, who we've had on the show. But I think because there's essentially like two pieces of artwork kind of to like represent both parts of the record. What kind of like did you give any sorts of like phrases or like imagery to Adam when you were kind of trying to capture like, all right, here's what we're kind of looking for, maybe represent it in this way? Like how much freedom did you give him? I'd love to hear about that as well.
I mean, we gave him we gave him a fair amount of freedom, and it's funny. Like I think a big theme of the creation of this record is, I mean, this is a pretty big endeavor, I guess, for most of us. Just like in putting out music, because as a quick aside, like I mentioned before, this has been a kind of very a touch and go band for a really long time, because I was in school, like, getting a doctorate degree, which obviously took like a lot of time, and I didn't really have a lot of free time. Like we would play a show like maybe 3 times a year, 4 times a year. Like maybe we'd have time to record, maybe we wouldn't. And then since graduating, obviously in 2020, in the height of COVID, it was like another stain on being able to do anything. So it just prolonged. I mean, we've been a band for a long time, but we haven't done a lot. And it's mainly because the, early half of this band has been kind of just really difficult to organize in terms of geography and time and schedules and whatnot. But a lot of it was kind of on this album was like figuring out what we do really like and kind of just giving other people freedom to have a say in kind of almost the output. And Adam's like a good example. I don't think Adam is an artist we would have gone for in the past. I mean, we've always kind of very much leaned into like reusing old artwork and like, like I love like old woodcut, old illustration art, from Harry Clark and Aubrey Beardsley and like a lot of these artists. And we use that on like a ton of merch and stuff like that. But I don't know. I mean, Adam had a few pieces like deep down in his Instagram that were very like they're very naturalistic, and they were like really evoked to this like really like dense and like vast sense of nature. And I just started talking to him, and I was like, listen, I know you do like all this very like supernatural and like very like intense like skulls and this and that. And I was like, we're not like a skulls band. Like, like we're not one of those bands. Like,
Yeah.
do you think I can give you the music to listen to, maybe some lyrics, and give you these few pieces that you've worked on before and just give you the reins, and like, can you just go with it? And he was just like, it'll take a little time, but I can do it. And he just came up with just some like ideas here and there. And like I remember he came up with the front cover, and I remember like looking at it the first time. I was like, this is pretty cool. And then like I came back the next day, and I was like, I actually think I really like it. And I was a little nervous to pitch it to the rest of the band, because I think everyone in this band can be a really harsh critic, myself included. And I was like, damn, I hope they don't think it's like too like metal in a way. There's so many metal bands that do these like painting, artwork pieces.
Everybody wants a Paulo Girardi painting. I love that guy. I
Me
like
too, yeah.
appreciator of artwork and stuff. Like, but and I love that shit. Like, not talking shit at all, but like, yeah, every band is like aspiring to that,
And it's like we wanted to do something that was by one of these like stalwarts of this like metal album scene, but make it something a little bit more out of their wheelhouse, or just forcing them to dig a little bit deeper. So obviously sometimes it took a little convincing, like basically being like, hey, Adam, I basically don't have any direction for you. Like, it's a very natural sounding album and it sounds like this. Please just like give me something. And I think, for better or for worse, we did this to Adam. We did this to Rob Harris, who did some of the inside artwork. He goes by the name Mystic Barbarism on Instagram. He does like incredible illustration work.
Yeah, he's gnarly.
He's awesome. We did this with Scott Evans, who mixed it. We're just like, I know this is going to be really hard. Bear with me. Like we did it to Magnus while we were mastering. We're just like, bear with me, pitching it to labels. Like, here's 85 minutes worth of music. We've never like put out anything this big before. Bear with me. Just like, give it a shot. That's the general kind of like, like it was just like giving unfounded trust in someone who we didn't know and just hoping that they would kind of deliver, because we just kind of believed in what that person did.
I think like looking at this and kind of becoming familiar with your band, like you kind of mentioned being a lot of starts and stops. This definitely feels like kind of okay, we persevered, we're here. Like, this feels like kind of a fresh new start, almost like, and we're going all in, because everything from the recording and the album artwork to some of the visual aspects, like the music video, everything seems like very meticulous and well thought out. And obviously you've had a lot of time to do that. And so like, I definitely commend you for that. And it definitely came through getting into the record. I am curious, because you kind of mentioned pitching the album. It seemed like even when this maybe was kind of teased back in 2022, you weren't necessarily even going with like a label like Riff Merchant. That wasn't even maybe considered yet. At what point did Chris and you guys decide to come together and join forces on the full length versus, the Heavier Than Thou compilation?
I mean, he reached out to us with the Heavier Than Thou compilation, and we were really excited about that. And I will say, all gratitude to Chris. It did kind of give this band a little bit of like a new lease on life. Like, we were just kind of like going into pandemic, and it was like crazy. And I work in healthcare, so working it through the entirety of the pandemic in a very hands-on fashion was like really just like mentally and emotionally draining, as much as it could possibly be. Like being on the front lines, that shit
Yeah.
really sucked.
Yeah.
And I think the music thing was like really kind of just like it was so far in the back of my head. And it just like felt like the only thing at that time was just going to be like, okay, like the healthcare thing is like crazy right now. Like I need to do this. I just graduated. Like I have to like find grounding. And like I remember one day just being at work and like we got this email from Chris and I was like, dude, this sounds awesome. Like this, like it gave me something to look forward to. We did that with Scott. It was really fun. We were originally gonna go and just do the cover, and I was like, "There's no way we're gonna finally align all of our schedules. I'm gonna drive down from Boston through this pandemic, and then we're gonna go record one song." I was like, "There's no way. Like, I'm gonna write two more things. We're gonna go and do it." And he was really happy, with the outcome, and the conversation came about one day. He was like, "What are you guys gonna do next?" And I was like, we have a lot of material. Like, are you sure you're interested in putting it out? And he was like, well, what do you have? And I was like, that's when we kind of like had this brief internal conversation within the band of, there's a lot of material. This is more or less of a way to dupe people into thinking, or dupe labels into basically being like, okay, we'll do this. Instead of just saying it's like a whole album, if I feel like if you pitch it as one album, people are going to be like, dude, 85 minutes. Okay, listen, it's been a long time since we put anything out. Call it two albums, call it like one big piece of body of work, but call it two separate things, like create a little bit of a division in it. So then maybe people would be a little bit more inclined to be like, oh, that's a heavy undertaking, I mean, it was definitely like basically ripping the idea from Melancholy from from Smashing Pumpkins, more or less. It's like one of my favorite albums. And it was just like, oh, you know what? That's a genius solution. Let's do that. And Chris was like, let's find another label. Let's have like an EU partner. Try to get it out there. I'll handle US. We can split the cost of it. And between two labels, it's just like putting out an album for each label. For a band like us, that was like awesome. We can do that. Like we're happy to work with another label and and do it that way. So he was more or less like, I'm on, but like it's a huge undertaking. Let's find another partner.
I'd like to circle back if I can. And I definitely want to like dive into this album a little bit more, but maybe let's circle back to some of the beginnings. Mark, how did you find hardcore? How did you find DIY music or extreme music? Where'd you grow up? How'd you find music?
Fuck, that's a good question. I'm not really sure. I mean, like, I guess I guess for me, like, I kind of like grew up a little bit on like just like big four thrash metal. Like that was like what my older brother listened to, was just like that, and like a little bit of like late 90s, like commercial whatever punk rock shit. And then I started, like, I took up playing the guitar, like, pretty young and stuff. And, I was never very like athletic or anything like that. So like, I just had like a lot of time to myself as a kid, taught myself a lot of music and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I guess like around the time, like a couple, well, that's not as, the really important thing is the fact that, and Julian will agree with me, we were lucky enough that we grew up in a part of New Jersey, which there's not a lot of like all ages venues and stuff, with the exception of this place, the Meat Locker.
Okay.
And the Meat Locker is just this little, I'm actually probably heading there after this, honestly, just to like catch up with some buddies. It's just this little fucking hole in the wall, like piece of shit, great place that has hosted, it's been open on and off for like 40 years. The guy that runs was in like new age bands, like in the early 80s. And it's like in the middle of fucking bourgeoisie ass, Montclair, New Jersey. So it's like this little oasis of like DIY hardcore and shit. So that's a really, really important thing, I would say. That was like the really spent a lot of formative years there.
Speaking to venues, what was your first show you ever went to?
Fuck, it was probably Bad Religion. Honestly.
Interesting. Okay. What was
Probably
that?
seeing Bad Religion.
How old were
Yeah.
you?
Maybe like 12 or 13, something like
Nice.
that. Yeah.
What do you remember about that night? Were you like just like in your 12-year-old brain where you just kind of shit in your pants, or like I mean I would be personally.
Well, I don't know so much. I don't know that that one was so much memorable, but I remember like a year or two after, I went to see Bad Religion again, and they were playing with the Vandals, who were also like a band that I was really into because they were actually in like the soundtrack of like a fucking GameCube game that I grew up playing, like aggressive inline. Yeah, so that song, An Idea for a Movie, was in it. So when I saw that like they were playing with Bad Religion, I was like, oh yeah, fuck yeah. So I went with my friends for like, I guess it was maybe like my 13th or 14th birthday or something. And that was hysterical because I remember that the guys from the Vandals, the vocalist and the guitarist, switched instruments. And so the guitarist was singing, and this was at the Asbury Park, like the Stone Pony Summer Stage. So he climbs up the metal rafters or whatever, and they did a cover of Don't Stop Me Now by Queen. And he pulled down his pants, and he was like hanging on by one arm and smacking his ass cheeks with the other one as he was singing Don't Stop Me Now. That was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I'll never forget.
That would have been like, I'm doing this forever. Like, I'm never not gonna go to show.
That was fucking hysterical. That definitely sold me.
That speaks a lot to you mentioning like kind of video game soundtracks. Like there are so many killer, like, I mean, the amount of music I probably got into because of like Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Pro Skater
like,
too. Everybody got everybody into like skate punk and shit. Like everybody got into Fat Records bands as a result of that, basically.
Dude, that American Wasteland, Tony Hawk American Wasteland, that one had a banger soundtrack to it. I think that was the first time I heard Thrice, and I was like, I remember hearing like Artists in the Ambulance, and I was like,
I even remember
I'm really into this.
I even remember playing. I know this band is like persona non grata now, but they were like pretty influential for me, and especially for like my political convictions as a teenager too. But like I remember even like the 2007 like NHL game had like Anti-Flag in the fucking soundtrack. Like I was like, that was crazy that was there. It's like, why would like mainstream is putting this like totally subversive music in the soundtrack?
It's true. And it's kind of interesting now too. Like I'll maybe see like a few songs get there, and I'm like, they're still, they'll stick like, I don't know if it was an NHL game, but I saw like, like Military Gun or something that, obviously they're kind of like blowing up right now. They're just getting thrown into something. But yeah, so many like games growing up, like snowboarding games that are like, probably never, like I remember I had for like the original Xbox, it was called Amped. And it was like, a lot of it was kind of the same soundy kind of pop punk stuff, but there were like some tracks in there that I'm like, I may not remember the title of, but I'll like, my brain will just get triggered by something. I'm like singing the melody or whatever. But Julian, what was maybe the first album you ever had as a growing up?
Oh man. I definitely got some hand-me-downs from my parents. My parents were definitely not like into like mainstream music. I mean, my mom was like a CBGB's regular. Like,
shit.
Yeah, she was just like, I mean, she's told me like, yeah, like I've seen the Ramones there like however many times, and
so you never stood a chance.
Oh no, dude! Like she was gonna out cool me like no matter what. Yeah, and like she like very casually mentioned like seeing Typo Negative and just like not knowing who they were at all, but just going down to the 930 Club in DC and being like, yeah, oh yeah, I went down there and I saw them with my friend. We were like, wow, this is actually really good. I was like, what? Like, but I definitely ended up getting some like hand-me-down CDs, and I think the first one that really stuck with me was just that Incesticide Nirvana CD, which is like I think a lot of like B-sides and whatnot, and it's like it's a really just weird collection of songs. But I was like, I remember just being like really really like hyper focused on it as a kid and like really really enjoying it, and that was the first thing that I just remember like holding and being like, oh, like this is mine. Like I can listen to this all I want. Like this is great. I remember I had one of those shitty little Walkman and I'd put it on that thing. It was cool. But I mean, outside of that, I think that like I don't know. I never really got. It's funny. I never got allowance like in a physical like $20 bill for my parents to go buy a CD. My dad came up with this idea that he was going to give me like a $20 iTunes gift card like every month as like my allowance. And I remember I would just deep dive iTunes like through the metal section because like I knew about Metallica. And then I remember the first thing that like I really like truly cared about owning was like I found out about Carcass. And I downloaded like I think it was necroticism, and it just like blew like my 14-year-old mind. And I just remember I was just like obsessive about having it on my iPod. It was like I had to have the artwork on it. I had to see the artwork. I had to like everything had to look great on the iPod. And I was like, this is like oh my God, I have this album. Like I got it with my allowance. This is awesome.
Kids may not remember before streaming, when like maybe even some LimeWire or FrostWire days trying to get
Yeah,
those
dude.
like those details of the songs just lined up right and spelled right or perfect.
Yeah,
And
dude.
but again, maybe just to interject myself, like that Apple the music section of that, and like going through
Yeah.
the recommended and finding shit I'd like a lot of like probably third wave thrash bands from like
Yeah.
the 80s from like Germany or something like that. Like it was a good time. Is guitar your first instrument?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it was. I did like piano lessons for like a very like short time, um, which I like remember very basic stuff on piano. Um, but I wish I would learn more. Maybe I will one of these days. But yeah, guitar has always been like kind of the very much forefront thing, you know. Kind of picked it up from my dad. Like he played or plays guitar still. And then it was just like full steam ahead with that. Yeah.
Both guitar players. What do you remember maybe the first riff you ever learned on guitar? Something that you were like, I gotta learn how to play this.
I don't know, Mark. Do you remember what you learned first? I'm trying to dig
Um,
deep.
dude, I mean, I don't know. That's a It probably
Honestly,
wasn't cool. I guarantee you it sucked, whatever it was. Because I started really young. Like I started playing guitar like in second grade, or some shit like that. Uh,
you don't really remember. I mean, I think my earliest memory of like learning stuff is like, I mean, I think for when my parents realized I was like getting into music and playing guitar, there's like this national like network called School of Rock, which is like they have these schools like all over the US. And they put me into that. They like got me into lessons. And the other thing that School of Rock does is like they set up these like seasonal like shows that kids can sign up for. And there's like a 20-song set list. They enlist like 20 kids or whatever. And you learn like 4 or 5 songs. You rehearse every like Saturday or whatever. And then at the end you play like 2 songs. So you pick like, whatever show you want to do. Like maybe like this season they offer like okay, we're doing a Who show, we're doing like a 90s grunge show, we're doing this show. So all the kids that have all these different tastes all over the school can like pick a show. And I remember just like the first time, I think I chose some like, I forget what the theme of the show was, but I remember learning like Zombie by the Cranberries, and I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh, I'm obsessed with this. Like, this is the
See,
vibe
that's
of the
definitely
song
way
is,
cooler than whatever it was that I like that I picked up. Like,
I mean, this is just these are the teachers feeding this to me. It's like it was not that I was coming across it myself. They were just like, "This is what you should like. Like this is the good stuff."
I love that. This is where you met Kate Parker, correct? Who as a guest on
Yeah,
the album. That's awesome. Her
yeah,
vocals are so cool. Like Annulment is like unreal. Such a great
yeah,
track.
dude. Kate is an awesome, awesome musician. I mean, we like Kate's a few years younger than me, so I met her like later on in the timeline of going to School of Rock. But it was funny, like there was always this divide in the school that we went to where like all the metal kids like would only do like the metal show, and then like everyone else would just do other shows. And like Kate would obviously, she was not doing metal shows. Like she's not really like into metal, but like she was always like a great singer. And towards the end of my tenure there, they would put together like students that had been there for a while and students that were like really technically proficient. And they would send us to go play these shows. And what, like we flew out to Chicago. We played this big show in Chicago. We played Summerfest in Milwaukee. And I spent a lot of time with Kate, like around like those shows and those times. And she's like, she's just a good person. She's hilarious. She's like one of the funniest people I know. And I was like, I just keep up with her over the years. And I'm like, dude, we should try to include you in some way. Like you're probably going to have a much more like fresh headspace about writing something like a clean vocal for something like this. Like we should just try to include you. And we found a way.
That's awesome. Is she a saxophone player too?
She is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude.
For the next record.
Dude, I know. Well, she recently just moved back down to New Orleans. So I would, she went to school down there. She moved back to New Jersey. That's when she was living in Jersey, she came and recorded all this stuff. And she just moved back down to New Orleans. So I've either got to bug her to come up to New Jersey, or I got to bug her and say like, here's some cash, go to a studio, record this, because like I trust you, go for it, you know. But yeah, no, she's just a great musician, good friend. We were really happy to include her.
How is it that you both met each other? Because Mark, I believe your first appearance on an album is the split with Chast. Is that how you pronounce their name?
Chase.
Chase, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's fun. You know, it's actually also, there's a really funny story about the first time all of us meeting Kate.
Yeah.
So before Leah joined, because when we were in the studio for this album, our former bassist Stephen Edwards was still playing, and it was like the first day that Kate came in, and I don't think that Stephen expected anybody else to show up in the studio. So when she opened the door and like they had never met before, he turned around thinking it was like me or somebody. And like he had like just woken up from a nap or something. He's like, all right, I'm ready to suck and fuck my way to rock stardom. He's like, oh, you must be Kate. So yeah, it was just like a fucking hysterical moment in the studio. Julian and I had been like Facebook friends for like a while, or like a couple of years or something. I had known of Cowardice. It's funny, I actually like saw Cowardice with Thou when I was in high school.
No shit.
With some of my friends. Yeah, I remember we went out. It was a fucking snowstorm. It was like a blizzard. Me and my friends took the train into New York City, walked through Brooklyn in a snowstorm so we could go see Thou, and Cowardice was opening. So I knew about it, and then Julian and I were like, you know, we had spoken like maybe a couple of times over Facebook and whatever. And then one day he put out a post because like John and Chris, who used to play guitar, who still plays with Sunrot now, decided that like, you know, they had to do other things or they were too busy or whatever. So I joined up. I had never met Nick at this point. Nick and I met through this band. So I just like replied to the Facebook post. I was like, fuck it, I'll do vocals. Sure.
I mean, like, I feel like Mark was, I mean, from my perspective, like Mark was probably one of the only guys in the scene that was like, I guess like adjacently into like music that I was also into. I definitely feel like we're a black sheep for the scene we're in, for sure. I don't think we really share a whole lot of similarities or space with a lot of other bands in our area. Like there's not a lot of slow music. There's not a lot of like sludge or doom or stuff like that around our area. It's a lot of like death metal and a lot of grindcore bands and a lot of like New Jersey hardcore and a lot of punk down in like New Brunswick area and whatnot. And Mark's listening to like Eco Crust and like weak,
like listening to like we kind of like bonded over bands like Weakling pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, like I think this is the guy. I think this guy gets it. And yeah, I think that was like that was the selling point, you know. of just like, yeah, I think he understands the approach, like he understands the angle.
Again, just based off of some of the research and listening to the record, there's definitely like a lot of influences. I mean, it's not just like straightforward, like, oh, this is doom metal. That's it. No, I you know, I definitely hear some blackened elements and, you know, some, you know, even, I would say, some maybe some like shoegaze type of stuff. And I believe you are in maybe another shoegaze project as well.
Yeah.
What's the scene like in New York? It seems like it is kind of like rich with a lot of different, you know, as you mentioned, like not just in like maybe extreme forms of music, but there's always something going on there. It seems like.
There is. I mean, Mark spends more time in the city than I do because I'm up in Boston, but there is always something happening. I will say that there's always something happening. From like a metal perspective, like there's definitely great acts that are present. They show up and they play sometimes, sometimes they don't. Like Yellow Eyes is a good example. Like they're an incredible like New York City based band. Like they're awesome. And they don't play out New York City a whole lot, but when they do, it's a real treat. Krallice, like that's another example of like that was like a staple like for me, you know, of just like this is so cool. This is a band that I found out about that I didn't know that they were from New York and then learned that they were from New York. And I was like, dude, this is awesome. But I mean, there's inevitably always a lot going on in New York. There always kind of has been.
I would also say that there's a lot of similarities between like Boston and New York right now. Boston has so many fucking awesome bands too, like Sadist, Foreign, but yeah, it's more like I would say New York and Boston share in common the fact that right now what's really popular, and I'm not saying that in a pejorative way, like it's trendy or whatever, but like the real like underground music right now is very sort of like that kind of like post punky like crust punk DB, like that shit is really happening right now. There's like that's where like if you want to like find underground shows like in Brooklyn that like people are throwing in fucking literal tunnels and shit, like it's like yeah, it's like real disc rocker shit, like very crusty, like or but they call it hardcore even though it's nothing like it's not like any of this like jock shit like Bane Terror, like not like I kind of like some of those bands, like I'm a huge Integrity fan, but,
Oh yeah, 100%.
but like it's the like punk HXC type of like that kind of like Impalers, that kind of shit, like the lo-fi jangly sounding like hardcore punk is really big in both cities right now, and a lot of that shit fucking rules. I mean, like there's some really awesome shows going on with that.
That's awesome. I'm potentially might head out there maybe later in the year to just I couldn't pass like Nails and Mammoth Grinder and all these types of bands are coming through or whatever.
Is that hitting out here?
I think it's at Brooklyn Monarch. I've never been.
The Brooklyn
Monarch. Yeah. Tight.
I got to go out there maybe a few years ago to see Full of Hell and The Body do like a collab set. It was at you wouldn't have known, like man, it's like Market Hotel.
Market Hotel. Yeah, Market Hotel with the train by the window.
Unreal. I was walking by that the whole weekend and I was like, I don't know where the fuck this place is. Like there's nothing on the outside of it. And then they're like, oh, it must be here where all the kids in black t-shirts are hanging out. But
I've seen some fucking awesome shows at that place.
That's
like,
a great venue.
I saw like I don't know, Julian, actually you weren't there, but like I saw one of them was like Regional Justice Center with Jarhead Fertilizer.
That's
which
crazy.
is awesome. We just in the other band just had the opportunity to play with Jarhead. It was fucking awesome. And then the other one was Elizabeth Color Wheel and Planning for Burial, and it was right before Have a Nice Life had put out that most recent album, and so they played the new shit before it was released there. It was fucking awesome.
That's so cool. Yeah, I just the whole with like you mentioned the train coming by, I was like, damn, this is like out of a movie. It's had such a great atmosphere to it. One thing I definitely want to talk about this music video is fucking great. The song's
Oh,
awesome,
yeah.
but it
Thank
like
you.
even just like hit that much harder, to the hills of humanity. Who is just like, who do you know that just has knight armor on deck like that? Like,
So,
wow.
dude, it's so funny. Like, honestly, like I look back and I'm like, that video feels like it was like conceived and like done so long ago, but it really wasn't. Like, it was kind of almost very last minute. Um, I'll say this, like for I guess in short, like I was talking to a friend who just recently started like an underground music label. This guy named Jordan who plays in a great band who we did some dates with called Hush. And they were like probably one of the staples of the sort of like doom, metal scene over here. He's kind of like up in the Hudson Valley area of New York. And he started this label called Darkest Records, and they're putting out awesome stuff. And I was talking with him about this album and I showed it to him and he was like, dude, this is like awesome. Like, how are you guys gonna like push this? Like it all looks great, but like, what's your plan? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I've never kind of like pushed something on my own like this before. Like, I was hoping to maybe lean on the labels a little bit. And he was like, listen, if the labels are not going to give you funding or whatever, like you should just find out a way. He's like, dude, just do a video. He's like, I'm telling you, it like really helps. It gives stuff like identity, like it's. And I talked to a few other people that were kind of giving me the same, they were giving me the same answer. And we have this good friend, Kyle, who he plays in an ambient project called Cementation Anxiety, and we actually have a collaborative album written with him that hoping that we'll record this summer. But he has an acquaintance who I met a couple summers ago. This guy named Stefan, and Stefan is this great videographer. Like he works in big kind of video stuff. I think he's mentioned he's like worked on like Ed Sheeran music
Oh
videos
wow.
and like yeah, like really like hi-fi shit. But he like loves like B-roll, like horror. He loves all this like other stuff. But he's also just like a doom metal fan. And I was like, Kyle, like, do you think Stefan would like bite on something like this? And he was like, dude, you can try. Like, he says no to a lot of music videos. And I hit him up. I was like, Stefan, like, I know I only met you one time, but like, hear me out. I know you like some doom metal stuff. Like, what do you think about doing a music video? And he's like, huh. He's like, I gotta hear it. I was like, I gotta hear the song. And he's like, let me hear can I just hear the album? Like, and I was like, okay, listen. He hit me back up a few weeks later and he was just like, okay, um, like if we're gonna do this, can we just go all in? And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, I've never done a 10-minute music video. Like, can we do it? And I was like, if you're up for it, we can do it. And he was like, I have a guy who I work with all the time. He has all these props. He lives out in Eastern Pennsylvania and he has all this access to like nature and this and that. And he was like, I think I can put something together. And he just, again, this is another example of someone who we just put full trust into, um, kind of on a fly, and was just like hoping that they could deliver because we believe in that person. We like that person. We think that their artistic view is good, and it's another like piece in this cogwheel of this album of just like we've never done this before. Like, here you go. Like, we're just going to trust you with this. And Stefan just came and he was just like, okay, just follow everything I do. We don't have a lot of time. Let's do it. And showed up with all this armor and shit. It was awesome.
Who's actually in the armor?
It's
me.
Mark. It's Mark and our bassist Leah. Yeah, yeah. So it's those two battling it out. Yeah, it's funny.
How did it feel? Did it get heated at any point? Do you
No, it wasn't. Well, actually, yeah, it was pretty hot. It was a warm day, and I was also a little bit sick at the time, still.
Oh, great. So
coming over a cold. But honestly, it was fucking awesome. I mean, just like who doesn't love like just like knights and sword and sorcery, right? But at some point at the end, I was still wearing it, and Nick, our guitarist, is like he's real into like Muay Thai and like BJJ and stuff. And so he's like, "Yo, I got my gloves in my car. Could I punch you?" And I was like, "Yeah, all right, whatever." So he starts wailing on me in the chest. He's like, "Ow!" I'm like, "That hurt?" He's like, "Yeah, didn't it hurt you?" I'm like, "No, I didn't feel anything."
When are you gonna be in a full suit of armor again? Like, yeah, take all the opportunity.
Yeah,
I'd let a car hit me.
Sooner than I think. I hope.
Yeah, right.
You know. But yeah, no. So.
But yeah, I mean, Stefan's buddy Jeremy, I learned this kind of after the fact. I guess he owns and like runs this page called Catacomb Culture, and he like basically has all these props that he uses for other video shoots and stuff.
Oh,
Because
I didn't know he was involved with that. I know about that, and I had no.
Oh, Catacomb Culture, yeah. Jeremy runs Catacomb Culture. That's like that's his thing. So he just happens to be like Stefan's right-hand man, and he was just like, I'm just going to bring all this stuff. It seems topical, like we should use it. And I guess he uses it for a lot of other videos for TV shows and stuff like that, and stuff. So he brought it, and it was immediately utilized.
I loved it. I loved it so much. And you mentioned your newest bass player, and it seems like maybe you now, like with the album and everything's out, it seems like everything's kind of, maybe for the first time in a long time, and I don't want to project this, but everything seems kind of solid. Like you got a solid lineup full of good people, full of talented people. I mean, Leah, like I checked out some of her solo work, Daisy and the Scouts I was not familiar with, Edge Pedal Burn. Like I loved all of these projects. How did you meet Leah? Like that seems like a really rad addition to the band.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right on the money with saying like this is the first time in a long time where we've had a lot of like solidity and solid ground to stand on. I mean, it's funny. There's like kind of this ongoing like narrative in the band, which I don't know if I particularly love, but a lot of these guys are like, well, it's your band. And I'm like, I'm just the last original member of this band at this point. Because like everyone else who was in the band before, like either just lives too far away, has other commitments, other bands and whatnot. But yeah, this is the first time in a long time there's like this like groundwork. And we kind of found Leah, I mean, more or less through Nick. Like Nick is kind of good friends with Leah. And it's funny, Leah was living in Boston while I've been living in Boston. She lives down in New York City now, but we didn't really know each other up here. She was going to Berkeley, and I didn't know her up here at all. And then Nick was just kind of like, dude, okay, Steve's leaving the band. Like we got to find someone. And he was like, hold on, like, you know, one of my friends is coming out to one of the shows tonight. Like she's gonna like watch, like she might be into it. And she was, and Nick was just like, we should maybe ask her to see if she's into it. And I was like, I'm gonna trust you, Nick. Like I don't know her that well, but you know, I trust Nick. You know, he's one of my bandmates, and I was like, you know what, I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, Leah is from a very sort of particular scene of music in Boston. It's really like Boston actually has this pretty thriving but like also small but like very tight like crust punk and like black metal community. And she played in a couple of bands years ago in Boston that actually I think well before I was had any idea I was going to join Cowardice or anything, like booked some of her bands to come play down in New Jersey and like for like little shows that I was throwing and stuff. So we all kind of met that way. There's just always been this kind of like little nexus between like that Boston like crusty punk black metal scene and like our New Jersey grindcore whatever, you know. So it's this kind of circuit that is just always going.
Perfect. I loved a lot of her getting into some of her previous work, and you know, I have to ask, you know, you've been sitting on this record for a while. Have you begun starting to write with Leah, and maybe kind of, you know, I know I don't want to put the cart before the horse because obviously the record's out now, and you know, you just released it, and people should definitely check it out. But have you begun writing in the time that this has been kind of sitting, and could we potentially see some new work in the future with some of these new members?
Oh yeah, dude, we're so sick of playing this record already. We've been playing this shit for so long now. I mean, I don't want to speak for anyone else in the band. Like, I truly do like we've played these songs a lot of times. Like, there are, maybe portions where I'm kind of bored playing this, but like, um, I'm still, at least for myself, I'm still proud of the record largely. Although it feels like such like a distant thing at this point from where the writing process began to, the recording and the mixing and the mastering and the art and all this, the rollout, and it feels like so far detached, but there's still like moments that I very much look on very fondly. And I'm still excited to play a lot of these songs live. And I have to reground myself and be like, well, people also have not been like sitting on it and listening to it for 3 years like you have. Like, you have to, like, just live with it and play the songs and like, stand behind it, because like this is the first time other people are hearing it. But to answer your question though, yeah, we're working on a lot of a lot of other stuff.
There's a lot
I
of
mean, I
stuff.
think a lot of yeah, like a lot of our sets now, like we're playing stuff that's like two releases forward, you
Oh
know.
wow.
Um, yeah. The last time we played New York, I mean, we're playing Brooklyn this Saturday, and we're kind of treating it as like an album release show of sorts. We're gonna play mostly like new album stuff from that. But the last time we played a completely collaborative set with our friend Kyle, who I was mentioning, is that ambient artist, Cementation Anxiety, and we have an entire thing written with him. So we just did a set of just those songs with him. We have two other ones that we're keeping in pretty like close rotation, that we'll probably save those for the next full length. I'm trying to get better with just writing all the time now, which was like difficult before, but now with a little bit more time and a little bit more force behind us now, it feels like a lot more tangible. But yeah, I definitely think you'll see something sooner rather than later. There's a few other things we kind of have brewing that I can't talk about yet, but you know, but we're keeping the train going.
That's
Yeah.
I'm so happy to hear that. Mark, how are you feeling, man? How do you feel like on the other side of this?
It's fucking I mean, I have to be honest, sometimes it's like Julian is such a prolific writer that I get a little bit overwhelmed sometimes. And that's not really all his fault. It's also because I'm the type of person who writes lyrics that don't repeat ever. Like, there's very rarely do I write a song that has like a repeating chorus or something like that. And I don't know, I try not to cut corners when I write. So I fucking work on stuff for like a long time. Like, I don't usually stick with like what's the first thing I put down on paper. Because I feel like it's really obvious when somebody does that. And sometimes if you're lucky, that's fine. Like sometimes people are like, but I feel like for this type of music, which is really it's meant to be really sort of like introspective, and it's supposed to strike. It's not like stuff that's just for funsies. So I mean, I take a lot of time with this shit, and but it's good because it forces me like to have a good work ethic and to like be organized with it and stuff. Julian gives me stuff, and I make sure that it gets done. That's my job. So
You said it, I think, perfectly. And with the amount of thought and care I went into it, and I felt like that was definitely true to what I heard on the record. And I can't congratulate you guys enough on work well done. Atavist out now through Riff Merchant Records. Yeah, you mentioned you do have some shows coming up. We're on a bit of a Terminator timeline here. You're playing, I guess, when this comes out last Saturday. I'm sure you played great. But yeah, like the acts on this, like Tribunal, great $20 spin band. And that was in Brooklyn. You also have, as you mentioned, you're heading out west Red Hawk Avalon in Washington for Cascadian Midsummer Festival, June 21st through the 23rd. Wolves in the Throne Room, Usnia. I mean, you got Stephen Von Till. That's gonna be so killer. Like,
Yeah.
We're really excited about that one. That one finally feels like a very much like, holy shit, like we finally fit in on a bill for once, you know? I mean, Mark and I were kind of touching on it before, but like it's always felt very much like we're like not we feel very much like outsiders in the scene over here, you know. I don't think that there's a whole lot of other bands that like necessarily maybe share always the same like ethos or sound and whatnot. And like this kind of feels like really like kind of at home. So it's
there's
gonna
some
be cool.
like shared DNA with this stuff, like big time. So it's like this is a very big deal to us.
It's funny, you know, people like for a long time like mistook us for a Pacific Northwest band for quite a while. And like we would have people, yeah, dude. People would hit us up thinking that we were not an East Coast band and they thought we were like a Pacific Northwest band for a long time, which was kind of funny, but like also flattering in a way.
Are you flying or driving out there? Because I know you got some shows kind of booked around this trip out west. So what's the travel arrangements looking like for you?
We're flying out there. We're flying out to Seattle. We're gonna kind of just like come in, like stay the day there, then drive down to the fest the next day, play, and then we're gonna do a few more after that, like Portland and Eugene, and then we've got like kind of a bender drive overnight to Sacramento because that is a brutal drive. So yeah, we'll drop off the car there and fly back home.
It seems like it's gonna be a great time. I mean, some of these bands on here, like, I mean, Cold Blood, Chained to the Bottom of the Ocean. I fucking love that band. That band's so sick.
We're funny enough meeting up with them at the same time, like colliding on the same day. We originally didn't know they were gonna be out in Eugene at the same time as us. And their guitarist hit me up and he was like, "Hey dude, like we're like coincidentally going to be in Eugene on the same day. Like, do you want to combine this?" And we're like, "Yeah, dude. All right, let's do it." talk to the promoter, like go in.
With all this said, getting into the record, you know, it's a lot of momentum going. You got some shows coming up. Is there anything that you would like to accomplish in 2024 and beyond, whether in music and life? Like, I'd love to hear it. What do you got going on? What's on the docket for this year?
I mean, I want to record that collaboration we have with Cementation Anxiety for sure. Those songs are really fun to play. I think for all of us, they feel like fun to play. I definitely want to get that down. I want to continue to write and whatnot. We've tried to lean into doing more shows. Like we've kind of always been a band that doesn't play like a whole lot. Maybe some more here and there to kind of get us a little bit more grounded in that. And I think I think that there's something to be said about like now that we have Leah on, like I really want to like, you know, change maybe or like experiment with the writing style of Cowardice a little bit. And it's always kind of been like I'll bring like almost everything to these guys and they'll kind of give their feedback and say, "Oh, let's change this a little bit," or like, "Let's do this, let's do that." But I would love to kind of like finally get a set, you know, group of musicians in the same room and say, "Okay, let's get together. Let's like actually write collaboratively in the moment and work on stuff like that." I think it might give stuff a little bit of like a fresh, you know, a fresh start.
Mark, what's on the goal list for 2024 and beyond? What are you hoping to get done this year?
Well, so as far as I mean, like obviously, just you know, I concur with Julian that we're gonna try and get this collaboration album done. Kyle is also he was actually also a coworker of mine at one point. So you know, we're tight too, and so looking forward to that. I also play in this other band, Lunar Blood, which is like a grindcore death metal.
Doesn't it feature some of the members in this band too?
Yeah,
as
so
well?
Chris plays drums in both bands and Nick plays guitars in both bands.
Hell yeah.
I play guitar in the other band, just do vocals. here, obviously. But yeah, I mean, we're working on some new shit. Like that band originally started as like an HM2 kind of like death metal, like sort of hardcore, but not, but like, dead, like, like trap them type hardcore. And now I'm playing a 7-string guitar in that band, and we're really going for this like fucked up weirdo black metal stuff.
I love that.
There was
I love
always
that.
some like black metal in there, but now we're really going like full force for the like Deathspell Omega type, like angular dissonant type of shit.
Say no more. I love it.
And then
So-
I also just recently started rehearsing with my friends in Nigh Infernal. I'm going to be playing second guitar in that band, which is like a black metal dungeon synth project.
You're a busy man, dude.
Yeah.
How do you do it? I don't know how you do it. That's awesome.
It's just fun. You smoke a lot of weed with your friends and play music.
Do we want to perhaps shift gears into maybe some recommendations? I don't know if you guys been listening to anything as of late that you'd like to share with anybody. I'd love to hear it. What you've been checking out as of late.
Well, okay, so I would say, dude, I don't know how recent this album is, but I have been on this band Doldrum for like the past like 3 months. These guys are exactly in that kind of Q zone, like I mentioned, like dissonant, fucked up black metal, that kind of shit. It's like very oddly clean sounding guitars, and the mix is just like superb. I know Sunrise Patriot Motion just came out with a new release. I listened to it. It was pretty good. Those are the guys from Yellow Eyes. It's like if you took black metal and you ran it through a filter that makes it sound like Depeche Mode. It's fucking awesome.
That's cool.
That's basically, yeah. Those are the two things I would have to point out.
Sick. I got to check it out. Julian, what have you been listening to?
I mean, I don't listen to a whole lot of metal, honestly. In general, like anymore. I used to be pretty like heavy into it. Like recently though, that the new Dive album, Frog in Boiling Water, cannot stop listening to it. It is so good. Otherwise, like kind of like some older music. Like I've just really been re-listening to that Smith's live album Rank like a million times. They do some songs like just way faster than they normally do on that live performance, and it's awesome. And they mash up like really cool songs on that record, and I've listened to that a lot. That Sunrise Patriot Motion record was cool though, that Mark mentioned. That was one thing I checked out recently that I was like, oh, I think I'm actually kind of into this.
That shit was very good.
Yeah, dude, that was really good. And then I mean, I don't know, I always go back to like some like, heavy stuff that's just always been like, in rotation. Like Asunder is a band I always just like default back to. That's like one I'll never stop listening to. Really, really early Hell stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Hell, like, yeah.
I don't know how, I think I know the abbreviated MSW or Matthew or how.
Oh, Matthew, yeah.
Yeah. That vocal technique of like, I think he's sucking it, like it's inward. Mm-hmm. That hurts my throat thinking about it. Like
I'm pretty sure that's actually, I think it's Liam from Mizmor who does all those.
Yeah.
Or I think he just does that vocal. Like I think Matt does everything else, but I think Liam just does those like those screeches, which is like crazy. Yeah. It hurts to think about.
I'm stoked to check out. I'm bittersweet, with Gilead kind of closing down, but
yeah.
I am very much stoked to check out that collab that Mizmor and Hell are kind of putting together.
That's gonna be great.
That's super sick. But yeah, I was like that. Like I listened to something like Brutus by Hell.
Dude, that song's unbelievable. That song is unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, like that was one band that like they never came out here for a long time. And I remember like when I was kind of really starting to get into this stuff, they came out here in like 2013 or something like that. I had to like I went and I had to pay off the door guy to let me in because I was not 21 yet, and it was like a 21 plus place. But I had to go see them. Like I was gonna freak out if I didn't. This was like before I graduated high school. I was pretty young still. And yeah, that's one band that's just like always still in rotation. That it's just like that's a metal band that I'll always like really really love. And that new Thou album, that shit's great.
It's unreal. It's so abrasive sounding, so heavy. Certainly feels like a lot of the classic, maybe more like the first few releases with some experimentation in it. And you know, obviously very much enjoyed it and getting a chance to talk to them about it. But thank you for letting me get a chance to talk to you about this record. Atavist is out now. Riff Merchant Records, Burning World Records. Check it out. Check Cowardice out on tour. If they're in a town near you, you're going to be heading out to the West Coast. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
All right.
Appreciate you, Austin. Thank you, dude.
Where can people follow you for any updates on the band?
We're most active on Instagram probably, which is cowardice.official. I mean, I guess you can follow the Facebook page. I think we just cross posts on there. We just cross posts.
Nobody's really posting.
Who's on Facebook anymore, to be honest? Who's on Facebook? Yeah. Instagram, hit us up on our email if you have any direct stuff that you want to ask us. But yeah, it's Instagram or email.
Yeah, and all that information, like contact stuff, whatever, is like on our Bandcamp, Linktree, etc.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to find.
Sick. Get the record, Julian, Mark. Thank you so much. We'll be back with more Riff Worship next week. But until then, we'll see you later. Peace.
Awesome.
Cheers, Austin. Thank you.